we met at a after-hours club, and David Bowie has an incredible knowledge of jazz. I didn't know that until we met that night. Matter of fact, I had walked into a club, a nightclub, and I was with Billy Idol. And Billy Idol and I walked in, and, you know, and I was a pretty big drug guy, so I'm not positive about this story. And I haven't bought Billy's book to see if he's denied or corroborated this story, but this is how I remember it. And I tell his ass to tell me it didn't go down like this. So Billy and I walked in. Now the only part I don't remember is that, did I drive Billy to the club? I don't know. But we walked into the club together, and this is exactly what happened. Fucking Ed, that's bloody David Bowie. And when he said Bowie, because he calls him Bowie instead of Bowie, that's David Bowie. He vomited. He went, bloody Ed, that's fucking David Bowie. And he barfed all over him. How you doing, mate? At that point, I was already talking to David, and you know, he lived in the same building as Luther Vandross and the Young Americans, and so that, you know, Luther Vandross was in my first band, and we were good friends, and Carlos Alomar and his wife sang on our first record, and that really was the essence of Chic. So we had this instant bond because we had so many friends in common, and so he invited me to his house in Switzerland, and one morning he walks into my room, and he plays this song that was the shell of Let's Dance. And he had a 12-string guitar. Now I always get this wrong, so I'm making this up because the first thing didn't do enough for me that I actually memorized it, and I don't have, and we didn't make a demo tape of that, but he came in playing something that was like, singing, and he was singing, let's dance, let's dance, or something like that. And I was like, whoa. I thought, so here's the part that I'm leaving out, is to see these stories are too deep to sort of gloss over. So the backstory is that David and I had been looking at all this rock and roll iconography and memorabilia and stuff like that, and finally, when he decided that he wanted me to produce his album, he produced a picture of Little Richard. Little Richard had a red suit on, full, like total monochromatic suit, getting into a red Cadillac, and his hair was sort of pumped over and had a red sheen to it, and it was just red. As a matter of fact, if you look at the David Bowie cover for, I believe, the second song for China Girl or Modern Love, he's in all yellow, his hair is yellow. It was like, gone, David. So anyway, what he did is he walked to me and he says, nah, darling, I want my record to sound like this. He showed me this picture of Little Richard. And what's great about David Bowie is he's a fucking genius. He doesn't have to say, my record should have this and then. He showed me a picture. And by looking at that picture, what did I pick up from that picture? That this picture of Little Richard getting into this Cadillac that was clearly a 1950 something or whatever, still looked like the future. It looked like we were, like it was modern and outer space, but it was an old record. So he was saying to me, or at least this is what I interpreted, that he wanted me to make a record that sounded like the future, but still sounded like the essence of rock and roll and R&B, but would be timeless. So I was like, okay, I got it. The picture looked fabulous. So when he started playing it, I was like, that shit was lame. I called a mutual friend of ours, and I said, is David Bowie the kind of person that thinks that I'm just a sycophant and would say that it's great no matter what? And they said, no, Nile. If David told you he thinks it's a hit and he thinks it's great, he thinks it's a hit and it's great. I was like, whoa. What do I do now? So I took this and I went, not funky, cause it's not that Little Richard, it's not modern, it's not R&B, it doesn't sound like the future. So I moved it up to, but it got dark sounding, but then I moved it up to B flat and went, and I went, whoa, just from, I mean, you guys can hear, right? It's not that big of a deal, but you can hear, it gets brighter sounding, and I was like going, I said, fuck, David's in the jazz. Let me invert it up to the 11 instead of doing the 4. And I went. I was like, wait a minute. So I was like. But then I was so afraid of this whole thing that had happened called Disco Sucks that I didn't want to chuck anymore. So I didn't play that even though I wanted to. So I just went and then had the horns play bam, 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 and then Bob Clearmountain had the delays make the rhythm. So the rhythm, instead of going, it goes, and then it still delay is working. Even though I never play, right? Because it's just the way that he has the double delays set up. And when Bowie heard that, I felt like, wow, I just walked across water. David Bowie to me was like my greatest hero. He embodied rock and roll that I grew up, me, Mr. Hippie, hey, wow, man, I'm with David Bowie, man. And when he looked at me and he said, that's my song, and I was like, that's how I hear it. And there's a wonderful video of, we recorded this demo at Queen, the band Queen studio called Mountain in Montreux, Switzerland. And when you hear the engineer tell the story, it's really funny. It's much better than me. He says, David Bowie started playing the he said, Nile walks in and takes over and says, David, hold on a second. Now the thing is that it's not quite that. He's sort of telling the truth. David only knew it the way he wrote it. But I had already done the arrangement. I had written out the arrangement for the band, and I had given it to the band, so he left that part out. So I took over. Yes, he's right. I did take over, but the band was reading the charts. So I did this whole thing, and the guy from Mountain Studio, and I have to believe him because he's got it on tape. He says that I wound up demoing the whole album in no time at all. The album Let's Dance, True Story, I recorded from start to finish, mixed everything in 17 days. Done. Never touched it again. Every song is one take, basically. That's why you've never heard any other versions of Let's Dance come out. You've never heard Let's Dance, the outtake version, China Girl, the outtake version. They don't exist. Once we got it right, we deleted the tape and moved on to the next song. Why? That one is cool. It's I love Let's Dance, and I would love to chuck it and do all sorts of stuff. Matter of fact, Prince and I played it a few weeks ago in New Orleans, and it was just, oh my God. Me and Prince playing rhythm guitar on Let's Dance sounds so unreal. And Prince takes everything off the internet. If you put a picture of Prince on the internet, cease and desist. So I couldn't help it. I put a picture of Prince and me playing Let's Dance on the internet, and at some point in time, we did something like, and we both put our hands up together, and Prince retweeted it and went, no words. It was so amazing sounding. It was just brilliant.
So